Hello and welcome to the third webinar on Southern Texas drought and weather outlook. My name is Joel Lisenby. I am the Regional Drought Information Coordinator for the Southern Plains region at NIDIS. If you missed our last webinar, you can find it at drought.gov. It was also linked in the invitation to this webinar, and it's also available as a podcast from the Southern Plains Climate Hub. And special thanks to Clay Pope for putting the podcast together for us. I would also like to acknowledge at this time our partners and thank them for helping to produce this webinar. The partners to produce this are NOAA, the National Weather Service, the Office of the Texas State Climatologist, AgriLife Research and AgriLife Extension, and the USDA Southern Plains Climate Hub. The format of today's webinar will be a presentation and then an expert discussion by our two experts on the panel. This will be followed by some time for questions. Now, if you have a question, please type it into the question box, and then at question time, I'll just read your question to the experts on the panel, and they'll be able to answer them. Our first presenter will be Victor Murphy. Victor is the Climate Services Program Manager for the National Weather Service Southern Region, which includes the state of Texas. He routinely participates in drought monitoring and the issuance of climate products from the various National Weather Service weather forecast offices across Texas. Following Victor, we'll hear a few additional comments from Dr. John Nielsen-Gammon. John is a Regents Professor of Atmospheric Sciences at Texas A&M University. He's also the Texas State Climatologist and has held that position for the past 20 years. His research includes extreme rainfall, drought monitoring, climate data quality, and computer modeling. So that's the introduction, and without any further ado, I'll hand over to Victor, and we'll have a look at what the current conditions across Southern Texas are. So Victor, I'm sharing the presenter baton with you now, and you should be good to go.
Thank you, Joel. I just accepted it, and everyone should be able to see my screen there. Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Hold on just for a second here. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor Murphy, and it's my pleasure to be here with y'all. This is the third webinar that we've done, Dr. Nielsen-Gammon and myself, in conjunction with the NIDIS folks, and hope it's been a good experience for everybody. Hope we've been able to give you all some good information. So from the real quick summary from the first webinar we did, I'll do a quick evolution of where we're at today. We said it'd be dry the first 2 weeks, which would be basically through the end of April and early May. Pretty much panned out pretty well. We said we thought that May would be wet, and by and large it has. On our last webinar, we were looking for some pretty heavy rainfall to occur in the South Texas area. I guess it was 2 weekends ago, and that panned out pretty well, except for parts of Cameron County and eastern Hidalgo County, but most of the rest of the South Texas area, basically from Victoria, Placid over to Laredo, or excuse me, over to Del Rio southward, which is the area of concern, did indeed see that rainfall. And we talked about continued high confidence for improvement in the drought monitor through May, and then we had lesser confidence going forward into June. So what does that bring us up to right now? Basically, same thing. We'll look forward to the next week or two, and then we'll go out the next three to 6 week period. So the difference, we did our first webinar, I believe it was April 22nd, a Wednesday. The drought monitor came out the next day, Thursday. And on the left here, I have the webinar, excuse me, on the left here, I have the drought monitor from April 21st, and you can see what it looked like on the left-hand side, and the most recent one, which is this last Thursday, the data goes through the 12th, but actually came out the 14th, is on the right-hand side. And you can see some some pretty noticeable differences. We did lose a lot of the drought across Starr County and Zapata County here in deep South Texas. Main areas of drought that were still shrunk in size a little bit, but was still persisted here around the Victoria area, around the Maverick County area, and also in the lower Rio Grande Valley, or the LRGV. New drought monitor comes out tomorrow. Nielsen said there will be additional considerable improvements, especially up here in the Victoria area, since they got pretty good hefty rainfall, but still we're going to have probably 2 holdouts in deep South Texas and the area here in Maverick County. But you can see a lot of the moderate drought area is diminished in size or disappeared, and these are statewide numbers, but the state as a whole went from 7% being in severe or greater drought down to 5% being a severe or greater drought. And this is all down here in South Texas, since there is no drought, no severe drought at all anywhere else in Texas. So we have seen improvements over the last 4 weeks, and like I said, drought monitor coming out tomorrow should show additional improvements. Then we're cautiously optimistic, even going forward, that we'll see even more improvements. Let me see here, bear with me. Okay, this image here shows the change in the drought monitor in the 4 weeks that we've been doing the webinars. So it goes from April 14th through May 12th. You can see the South Texas area here that we've been concentrating on, from this to say Galveston Bay to about Del Rio southward. The lightest area of green is 1 category improvement in the drought monitor. The second shade of green is 2 categories improvement, and the third shade of green is actually 3 categories improvement. So there has been some big improvements here: Jim Hogg, Zapata, Starr counties, I think up into Duval and actually Webb counties, and also some slight improvement here in the Victoria, Jackson County area up towards Houston. I think we'll see more improvement in this week's monitor in this area here around Victoria. And a few areas have seen some minor degradations, most notable probably being here around Cameron County area. You can see as South Texas has been improving, North Texas is actually getting drier. So once again, in a state the size of Texas, not too uncommon to see drought improving in one area, worsening in other areas. So here is a 2-week observed rainfall. You can see the scales on the right. Biggest rainfall amount, there was like about a 10 to 15 inch rainfall bomb across Comal County, just north of the San Antonio area, which is not really in our area of concern. But you can see here around the Victoria, I think this is Jackson County, some widespread 5 to 8 inch totals there across a lot of that county. But 1 county away, Victoria, lesser amounts, but still 2 to 3 inches or 2 to 4 inches. Still very positive. And in general, there was widespread 2 to 4 inches across much of the South Texas area. A couple areas that did not get quite so much rainfall were around the Del Rio area and along the Rio Grande down towards Webb County, basically about a ½ inch to 1 inch or so. And also, as pointed out previously, Cameron County and eastern Hidalgo County, which also sort of missed out on the heavy rain event 2 weekends ago and only got about 1 to 2 inches of rainfall. But still, nonetheless, in general, a lot of yellows, so I'd say the average rainfall is probably about 2 to 3 inches or so. The percent of normal rainfall for the past 2 weeks, you can see that just about the entire area is in blue here, or 150% of normal or more rainfall. Parts of Kleberg, Kennedy County, these other counties to the west, once again, Starr, Jim Hogg, and Duval County saw in excess of 300% of normal rainfall. So there was a lot of rainfall in the last 2 weeks or so. Once again, a couple losers, unfortunately, Hidalgo, Cameron County, and here along the Rio Grande, especially from Maverick County up towards the Del Rio area. I threw up some rainfall stats. A lot of areas, a lot of different counties saw more rainfall in the first 3 weeks of May than they saw in the first 4 months of the year. Most notably, you can see Rio Grande City there, I believe in Stark County along the Rio Grande, had about 150% more rainfall in the first 3 weeks of May than the entire first 4 months of the year. McAllen got almost double. Kingsville area about 150%. Same thing for Robstown, Alice area. Corpus Christi, about 150% of what they had the first 4 months of the year. And Victoria, with the rainfall amounts for May being pretty high in the Victoria area, the 3.10 inches they got was good dowsing, but it's actually right around normal for the year and still less than what they had previously. But still, nonetheless, you see a lot of areas, once again, more rainfall in the first 3 weeks of April than in the first 4 months of the year. So real quick summary, here's Brownsville. On our last webinar, they're about 20% of normal, 6th driest, 143 years. Now, they're up 252 for rainfall, 17th driest, 38% of normal, still dry, but they have had some improvement as we expected. You can see here's the rainfall increase right here on the lower right-hand side. For Corpus, same thing, a little bit more dramatic. They went from 13th driest to 33 driest in 133 years of data. Still among the driest 25% of all years so far, but at least it's a lot better than the driest 10%, which is where they were 2 weeks ago. And you can see the rainfall increase there. And Victoria went from 9th driest to 12th driest, slight increase from 47% normal up to 54% normal. Once again, May is really a wet month in Victoria, and although they did get over 3 inches of rainfall, I think they have seen over 3 inches of rainfall so far in May. That's actually just near normal for them. So going forward, here's what the 7-day outlook looks like. This is from our friends at the National Weather Service Weather Prediction Center in Washington, D.C. And you can see the color scales on the left-hand side. The blues, the lighter blues are about 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches. The purples are about 1.5 to 2 inches, and the reds are basically 2 to 4 inches. So looks like pretty much the entire coastal plains forecast to receive maybe 1 inch or so, 1.5 inches of rain over the next 7 days, which is well above normal, especially down here in South Texas. A little bit closer to near normal around the Victoria area, still pretty hefty rainfall. And as you work your way inland or westward, you can see these rainfall totals increasing dramatically. Looks like a lot of 2 to 4 inch rainfall totals over the next 7 days, falling, say, from along the I-35 corridor from DFW through San Antonio down to near the Laredo area and around Del Rio. So more good news as far as drought relief goes. Looks like most of this rainfall should fall on the Sunday to Tuesday time period. So still a couple 3 days time to make preparations for that. Maybe get some things out of the ground as needed before the ground gets waterlogged. Sunday and early next week. Here's the week 2 forecast from Climate Prediction Center in Washington, and they're showing basically about a 45% chance of above normal rainfall over the week 2 time period, which runs from May 27th through June 2. So about a 45% chance above normal, 33% chance of near normal. It's always sort of cooked into the equation, and about a 22% chance of below normal. So after you're done, racking and stacking it and slicing and dicing it, you have about a 2 to 1 tilt in favor of being wetter than normal versus drier than normal for week 2. So with the wet week 1, which we saw, plus the increased probability of wetness for week 2, the next 2 weeks should be wet, and that should lead to more improvement in the drought monitor. This map here is an experimental product. It shows a deterministic. The previous map I showed you was a probabilistic forecast for rainfall in the week 2 time period. This is more of a deterministic forecast. And the yellow area is about 1 to 2 inches. So you can see a few swaths of 1 to 2 inches here from Corpus Christi running northwestward. Victoria area has about 1 to 2 inches perhaps also. And most of the rest of the area, about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch or so. So not too bad for a 1 week period in the last week of May, first week of June. So once again, on the whole, near average to above normal. And as per the probabilistic chart from earlier, if you combine the above average with the near average, you're probably looking at about a 75% probability of near normal to above normal rainfall for this week 2 time period. I mentioned several times before, just want to say it again, you can see where May and June are some of the wettest times of the year for Victoria. So for example, so far this May, Victoria's actually had 2.89 inches of rainfall, actually slightly below normal, but that's more that basically it's 90% of normal, just above 90% of normal. So you can see why they've had some improvements in the drought, just with getting normal rainfall. So, one of the good keys to staying out of a long-term sustained drought is getting at least near normal rainfall when it should be raining. And for Brownsville and Corpus, you can see Brownsville's also had just above 90% of normal rainfall for May, enough to give maybe some slight improvements in that area, although not that significant. They did miss out on the big rain event 2 weeks ago, whereas Corpus has been one of the winners. They're at 180% of normal rainfall so far in May. They're up to 3.16 inches of rainfall, which is about 180% of normal so far for this month. So, and we see a continued improvement there. Couple quick things before I wrap up here. The Atlantic Basin hurricane season starts in 10 days. You can see that, well, it starts on June 1st. Tomorrow, the NOAA and National Weather Service will be unveiling their 2020 Atlantic hurricane season outlook for the Atlantic Basin. That gets released tomorrow. Probably hear about that in the news media. And it's looking like it'll probably be at least near normal, if not more likely above normal. So sort of a mixed bag there. Obviously, you don't want anything too significant, get wind damage. At the same time, statistically or probability-wise, if there's more named storms than usual or greater activity than usual, that should lead to some, greater probability of wetness across South Texas over the summer. And I did want to point out here, I haven't shown this graph before. This is a graph here from the North American or the US GFS model. And basically it shows areas of, orange and brown and green. The green areas here, you can see South America, you can see the Central America in here. You can see these big bright green areas. These are areas of enhanced low-level convergence and enhanced upper-level divergence, which are very beneficial, very positive for the development of tropical cyclones. So this is a day 10 to day 15 time period, basically the last 3-4 days of, last couple days of May and the first 5 days of June. So we may see something, developing here in the Western Caribbean or around the Yucatan sometime, say the first week of June, with some tropical characteristics. Might just be a big slug of rainfall, could end up developing into something more, but depending upon which direction this tracks or which direction the rain slug moves, we could be getting a, wet, not only first week, perhaps even the second week of June for the South Texas area. So in summary, should have continued improvement in the northern portion of the area, Victoria westward, based on the wetness in the next 2 weeks. I would say high confidence in that. Same thing for Corpus Christi area. Week 1, week 2, both look quite wet, high confidence. The lower Rio Grande Valley, I think the week 2 time period looks a little bit, not quite, probabilities for wetness is a little bit lower than it is further north. The same thing for week 1 too. So more cautiously optimistic, perhaps say low to moderate confidence for improvement in the lower Rio Grande Valley. Going forward, let's say out into June, July, or perhaps even August, I think the last area of South Texas, I would say get out of severe drought or maybe get out of drought in general, would probably be that lower Rio Grande Valley. Right now, most of Hidalgo County and Cameron County are in a severe to extreme drought, and I would think they'd be the last ones to get out of that, whenever that might be, or maybe the last ones to get out of just say drought in general. And I would think in general, not getting too detailed, the tropical considerations, with the enhanced probability of likely having an above normal season for named storms or for a number of storms in general, that would be another positive consideration for drought improvement across South Texas. Although, we never know where these things are going to end up tracking, and depends, what week they develop and what the steering currents are the week they develop, things like that. So that's all I have. And just real quick, I do want to show the contact information for the National Weather Service forecast offices in Brownsville, Corpus Christi, Houston, and Austin, San Antonio that do cover South Texas. If you have any kind of specific questions or concerns about the short-term, longer-term forecasts, these would be your local experts, your point of contact. And so with that, Joel, if you can hand it off to John.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. So, yeah, I think without saying much more, I'll hand over to John. Do you want to add or take away from anything that Victor has talked about?
Oh, I won't take anything away. Let the rest of the audience take away the messages. I'll flesh out a little bit of what's likely to happen in the next week or two and give a sense of the confidence in the forecast. Basically, for the next few days, we're going to see continued strong winds from the south and southeast. Chances of occasional thunderstorms, especially out west around Eagle Pass and that area, but nothing particularly organized. Then we get a significant change in the weather pattern developing basically around late Sunday, Monday timeframe. And what is essentially going to happen is we're going to get an upper level disturbance forming somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico or northern Mexico. And wherever it happens, there'll be widespread areas with rather wet conditions for the majority of next week. We're talking several inches of rainfall, but it's not clear yet whether that's going to be like the area from Houston to New Orleans to Mobile, or whether it's going to be more of the Texas coast on down to Brownsville, or whether it might even be a little bit farther west and affect the more inland regions of Texas. So we'll be looking pretty closely at how that's going to develop, and probably really not until about Friday, a couple of days from now, will the location of those disturbances become a lot more clear. So by the weekend, pay attention to your forecast. You should have a pretty good idea whether we're going to get substantial amounts of rain next week, or whether certain places are going to be unlucky about things. And as we've talked about before, the Gulf of Mexico is still running warmer than normal, so any tropical disturbances or semi-tropical disturbances that form over the Gulf are going to have a lot of rainfall potential associated with them. And right now, it looks like the main question is just going to be where that's going to decide to set up. So that's all I wanted to add to what Victor shared with everybody.
Thanks, John. So I think the takeaway I'm getting from this is sort of big picture. We've seen some steady improvements in southern Texas over the last 4 weeks. This includes, we had about 150 to 300% of normal rainfall over the past 2 weeks for some of Texas. Some areas missed out. But when we look ahead, we're looking at a pretty big shift toward a wetter weather pattern. Some areas might get 1 to 4 inches of rainfall over the next 7 days. When we look beyond that, in the 2 to 3 week time frame, there looks like some sort of a tropical incursion coming on shore that will continue this wet pattern. But what you're saying is that exactly where that will form and move is still a bit unknown, and there's a lot of uncertainty about who might get all of that rain. Am I getting that summary right?
Yeah, that's a fair summary. And I forgot to mention, I mentioned that I did say that we're going to continue to have strong winds from the south and southeast for a few days. No matter where things set up next week, it looks like the winds will die down considerably. So we're neither going to be getting strong winds from the south nor any blasts of dry air from the north. So even though temperatures will remain high, evaporation rates will not be as bad next week as they're going to be this week. And of course, we might get hardly any evaporation at all if we end up being in the crosshairs of the tropical rainfall.
Okay. So that may be good news on both ends. So less evaporation and more rainfall. Well, unless unless you get too much rainfall like they're seeing up in Michigan right now, then the problem swings the other way. So thank you to both of you, John and Victor. Your expertise, as always, is much appreciated. Now we have a few questions that I'd like to start addressing. Some are comments and some are questions. We've got two comments from Barry Goldsmith. I think, Barry, are you at the National Weather Service? I think he is. I'm not sure about that. But his first comment from Barry is, yeah, okay, thanks for that. Barry says, for what it's worth, the improvement in Cameron County was from a single squall line event and not a prolonged period of occasional rainfall. Still not seeing an atmospheric river event from the deepest tropics to bring confidence for rapid and or sustained improvements towards the Texas-Mexican coastal border. So I guess that's a comment about the flavor of rain we're getting. You really, to really moisten up that soil, you need sort of that England style of rain that's just a little bit of at a time, that drizzle that can soak into the soil. But Barry's saying that we had a squall line event where you had a lot of rain that came in one big burst, which means there was potential for runoff and not all of that water could be used. I think that's what that's about. Do either of you want to comment on Barry's comment?
Yeah, that's right. Unfortunately, it's been mostly heavy, short bursts of rain that we've been getting in South Texas. Farther north, it was a little more sustained, but yeah, we have sort of a good news, bad news sort of thing. Things were so dry a couple of weeks ago in many areas that rain was able to drain into the cracks in the soil and improve infiltration that way. But that's not really the way you want to do it.
Sure. Thanks for that. One other comment from Barry. He says, but the uncertainty in the location of the upper level disturbance is crucial to how far south the bigger rains get. John, would you like to comment on Barry's comment again?
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. Sure. I don't have anything to add to what he added.
Yeah, sure.
She's going to tell the
story. Yeah, great, thanks. Here's the next question. It's from Jesus. What about the rice area of Coastal Bend? Will rice farms need to be worried? And then he adds the Wharton area.
Yeah, they've gotten some improvement so far, and they have probably a better likelihood of getting extensive rainfall next week than places farther south. Of course, you always have to worry this time of year. You don't want to have to be depending upon future rain. You'd like to be able to rely upon rain that already occurred. But I'd be optimistic at this point.
Okay. Optimism from John. That's great.
Yeah, hey,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Victor. If my screen is still up there, I'm not sure if it is or not, but
yes, we can see it.
Okay, yeah, I think I've got Wharton County highlighted there. I know I'm close, but anyway, you can see over the last couple of weeks, all these coastal Bend counties from Victoria up towards the Houston area did see in excess of 2 inches of rainfall last past couple of weeks. And like John said, I would concur with what he said. Going forward, I would expect at least the next couple of weeks, near normal to above normal rainfall.
Okay, great. One more question. It says, looking outside of Texas, any idea about the current mid-Michigan flood, things like return period? How does it compare to the local record? John and Victor, do you want to take a stab at talking about what's happening up north outside of Texas?
Yeah, sorry, my eyes have been focused south, so I haven't been following the rain up there.
And
yeah, I just know in general they've had some heavy rains up there. I actually saw a tweet yesterday where Chicago, this is interesting, John, you may have seen it yourself. I'm sure the weather records for Chicago go way back. I'm gonna guess maybe 1870s or so, or 1880s. Anyway, May of 2018 was their wettest May on record, like just over 8 inches. And I think May of 19 surpassed that, like about 8.5 inches. And now May of 20 has surpassed that. with I think almost nearly 9 inches. So been very wet up there, and I think, you know, adjoining parts of Michigan also. And you know, I guess it was I guess, you know, the amount of rainfall up there is a private dam. There's a lot of private dams, not just in Michigan, but also across Texas. So I guess you know, a private dam couldn't, you know, it got a breach and the water burst through. So.
Yeah, Victor, these were serious dams. They weren't just private dams that were failing.
Oh, okay. I think the one I read about was a private dam. I thought I saw it somewhere, but you know, John, it might be a good segue to talk about, you know, more increased heavy rain events, or, you know, the percentage of rainfall that falls during heavy rain events.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a general long-term increase in intensity of heavy rain. I've done some work on Texas, which confirms that we're getting that too. But basically, everywhere in the eastern half of the United States has been undergoing an increase of rainfall intensity, and it's really happening on all time scales, from sub-daily to even monthly. We had our big wet month in May of 2015 when the state as a whole broke its previous monthly record by over 2 inches, which was quite remarkable in itself. But yeah, just over the past month, there's been a band of heavy rain going all the way from southern Oklahoma into Wisconsin, with rainfall totals of anywhere from 6 inches to 15 inches. So it has been quite wet up there. And, you know, the general rule, unfortunately, is you've always got evaporation going on, so it's got to be raining someplace. And unfortunately, I mean, some places are going to get lots of rain, other places are going to get drought, because it never evens out.
Okay, thanks for that answer. There was one other question came in asking about some sources, looking for where to find journal articles, etc., on research related to land cover, land use, precip, drought, flooding, etc. Unless any of you have some really good source off the top of your head, I'm not sure if this is the best forum to share access to articles, because we don't really have a way to share links to online resources here. John or Victor, do you know any place just off the top of your head where people could look for research on land cover, land use, and precip, drought, flooding, etc.?
I don't know of any good summaries, but there's individual papers in the scientific literature that have, for example, shown that irrigation in West Texas has helped actually increase rainfall downstream, and it's well known that the greater the amount of moisture that's available to be evaporated from land cover, the cooler the temperatures will tend to be in the summertime. And I guess the last thing I'll say in that context is, for a recent report we did, which is available from our website on extreme weather trends, we looked at trends in the number of 100-degree days, and over the past half century or so, the trends are about twice as large in urban areas as they are in rural areas.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, thanks for that answer, John. And I think I might wrap it up there. So a very big thanks both to Victor and John for sharing your expertise and helping us understand the current conditions and the changing conditions across southern Texas, where we've seen a marked improvement in conditions relating to the drought across much of southern Texas. This is going to be the last in this series of drought webinars. We'll try to organize them again next time a major drought shows up in Texas. But for now, we'll say thank you for participating, and we hope to catch you again next time. I hope it's not. I hope it's not soon. I hope that we don't have another big Texas drought in the near future. But when it does, we will be there.
And I'll add that if you got any feedback on the content of these webinars and something you'd like to see done differently next time, you can either send Joel or myself an email. My email is n-g tamu.edu.
Thanks for that, John. And my email is my name, joel.lisenbee@noaa.gov. Lisenbee is Lisonbee. I'm happy to get feedback from participants on this. So thank you and goodbye.